This is a review, maybe some tips for casting jewelry specifically in this furnace right here. This is the ToAuto casting furnace. It's just a China, you know, copy. Um, this is the first time I'm using this. I'm used to oxygen acetylene centrifuge casting. Um, but I've been in the industry for a while and I've been watching the prices of these things. And when I first started, these type of machine was just, the price was outrageous. And it was always cheaper, and everybody I knew just used, oxygen propane, oxygen acetylene setups. But then recently I just was looking around, and this thing is like $230. I was like, why not? And you can dial in the temperature and everything. It's just, sure, I'll give it a shot. And so far, let's see, maybe as of now, 25 pours later, mostly silver and gold. Also, it's been holding up. I can't believe it's holding up. Like I said, it's just, and don't get me wrong, I have no problem with China products. Some China products are better than others, and everything is made in China pretty much. And I love tools, and I love made in the USA tools, but even those tools sometimes, not so great too, so this depends. It all depends, be reasonable, basically. But this one, wow, okay. I'm also coming from a little bit of a welding background, and I always remember when you approach a welder, like a new welder you've never used before, you have no idea what it's going to do, because it's not your welder. So you have to do tests first. You don't just start welding on that finished product. You get all the settings dialed in correctly, and every machine is a little different. And that's how you should be treating these things. You don't know. I don't know what I don't know. So, yeah, one temperature might be different for another person. And so your first pour, don't just pour that finished product. You want to test it out. See if that's the right temperature. Like, for me, when I cast gold in this, I have to bring it up to 1050 Celsius, to get a good pour on it. And for silver, I have to do 1037 Celsius to get a good pour. And that's what took me a while to figure that out. But that's what works for me, and what works for me isn't gonna work for you necessarily. So you just gotta test it out. Don't just, do your first pour some little ingots or whatever, and do that. The great thing about this one specifically that I did like was inside the coils, the heating coils are not exposed. They're actually embedded inside of the refractory, and gives them a little bit more protection, which is really nice. This uses graphite crucibles. The graphite is pretty cool. It's the first time I'm using graphite crucibles, to be honest. And yeah, you don't need borax. You don't need any flux. The graphite, when you heat it up, releases a gas that actually shields the metal. So yeah, forget all that flux stuff. You don't need it. It actually, if you put any fluxes in these graphite crucibles, it'll shorten its life. They say throw away these crucibles after like 8 pours. I've used it maybe like 12 for one. It seemed it's fine. That's just me again. My only complaint is I push my things, and one day I was tempering a crucible, and we'll talk about tempering, and I left it on for 2 hours, which is a no-no. You're only supposed to leave it on for like an hour at a time, and it's fine. It's fine, still fine. But the lid is deteriorating, and that's superficial to me. That's just like cheap, high temperature paint, which is flaking off. But it is annoying because it is impurities that, when you open that lid, there's a potential that these weird little enamel, whatever that paint is that they put on, will flake off into, whatever you're casting, whatever metal you're casting, and that will, bring some impurities in. You do not want that, especially if you're casting gold. Nope. So that's a little annoying, but there's just something to be aware of. I just wire brush mine off, and just make sure it's totally clean. And yeah. The other thing is, when casting with this, is I don't like to open the lid. Like, I see a lot of people, they open the lid and they stir it and, do all that stuff like that with it to check on it. And I just have this weird feeling when I open that lid, I'm like, that supposed gas that is supposed to be protecting my metal gets disturbed, and all this stuff, and I'm releasing the heat out of it and all of that, so I don't like to open it. So how do you know if your metal is melted, right? Okay, so like I said, I'm used to using flame for melting metal, and when you melt metal with like a flame, what happens is it turns into what I want to say is like a liquid droplet. And what you want to look for is, in this droplet, it's going to have like really rounded edges on it. And then at the same time, what you can do with a flame is you can move it around, and that droplet will move, and you'll actually watch it move around a little bit. And that's when you know it's ready to cast. Go. You spin the centrifuge. This, I mean, you can look down in there and then you're like, what? You don't have that flame. You can look for, again, you can look for it to kind of liquefy into that droplet, no hard edges on it. But then at the same time, for me, when I was using a flame, you could move it, it could actually move and see it. So what do you do with this then, right? Well, what I do is I turn all the lights off in my shop. You should have a few of these. This is a number 5 welding shade glasses. I grab myself a number 5, and there's a tiny hole at the top of this. Okay, you turn your lights off, get your number 5, goggles. Look down in that little hole, okay? And what you're gonna look for is, you're gonna look for a smooth dot. And on top of that dot is gonna be a little bit of, and that's gonna be a little bit of your impurities are gonna be floating around in that center of that dot, okay? It's probably not recommended, but because I'm used to being able to watch the metal move, I just grab the side and just ever so slightly, just a little. It doesn't take much. Like, the machine's not even moving. It doesn't even look like the machine's moving, okay? But I just move it just a little bit, okay? Just a hair, just enough that I can see the metal moving, okay? And when I see that metal moving around, and I see that dot, and my temperature has come up to the proper temperature, and it's doing all of that, because you never want just one sign, you want multiple signs, then I know, okay, 5 minutes. Gonna let it sit there for 5 minutes, and I should be good to go. With casting, a lot of problems happen because things are underheated, and you want to make sure it is hot. And there are certain rules, of course, they're like, you want to be 100 degrees over the melting point, but those are just like starting rules. And like I told you, every machine is different. Like, every machine's thermostat's a little different. I don't know what's going on in here. You got to test it. You got to see, and but you always need, of course, you have the rules to as a benchmark to follow to start off with, and that's great. Um, Another thing that nobody really talks about is tempering these when you first get it. So I also have a background in casting bronze. We used like 100 pounds at a time. And whenever we got like a new crucible, we would temper it, and there wasn't much to it. It wasn't like an exact science, like after we were done pouring, if we had a, new crucible, we just throw it into the, furnace, leave it in the furnace while it was cooling down, and, that was good enough. And it was a bit of a habit I picked up because, they always say you want to temper it a little bit. Supposedly it's supposed to be tempered and tested, but come on, China, right? So can't trust them, right? So just, temper your stuff. And I always remember the ceramic guys in the art department when they get new furnaces, or they get new kilns, as new kilns, they would temper the new kilns too. Same procedure, and it's really easy to temper the furnace. You just throw in your crucible. No, throw in your no crucible, ramp it up to 700 degrees Celsius, and just let it cool overnight. Do that to the graphite crucible too. But yeah, great machine. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.